When I was little, I liked to play sports. I loved music. I played the piano, the flute. I loved to sing. Right now, I'm not able to do those things because of my health challenges. Every day, I'm so nauseous. I'm always in pain. I have migraines. I can't sit up. And I rely on everyone for everything. Like, I can't do anything for myself. It's terrible, and I'm always miserable.
About a year ago, she was at school, and she called to ask us to come pick her up because she was really sick. We went to the doctors, and they told us it was just a virus. It would play its course, and it was a couple weeks that went by. She was still really, really sick. I knew at that point there was something a lot more scary than we actually thought was happening.
For Bryn, it was very abrupt. Remember that day very clearly. It was the day of her 11th birthday.
We were just jumping around, having a good time, and my stomach hurt. And I ran over to my mom and I was like, I don't feel good. That night of my birthday, I was just miserable. The next morning came. I couldn't even get out of my bed. I was just screaming at the top of my lungs. I've never been in so much pain. At a young age, you don't really think, oh, you're gonna be sick for the rest of your life. In my case, that's how it was gonna be.
I wanted to dance every hour of every day. I was there at the studio like 35 hours a week, so it was my second home. If I could, I would still be dancing. It feels like the end, like the end of a story and you're done.
Ready? 5, 6, 7, 8, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
I started off doing dance because I loved it. Like I learned my first back handspring when I was 2.
She would dance all over the place and was always singing and just happy. I always like to compare her to Disneyland, the happiest place on earth. She started having symptoms when she was 11 and a half.
I would literally be in like crying pain by the end of a class. That's when I knew. I was like, this is not normal.
Physically, she just wasn't able to keep going.
I was losing a lot of weight and I became very fatigued and very weak.
As a mother, it's really hard to watch your child be sick, and especially when there's no understanding or answers to it.
Couldn't go to school. I would try to attend the class and I would feel so sick. And some teachers wouldn't get it. They would have doubt in me and say I just wanted to leave class. I was constantly in a hospital doing procedures, surgeries, seeing different doctors at least 4 or 5 times a week, and I never noticed a difference.
So often when patients go in for this, the very first thing that a doctor thinks is that it's a psychological issue, a mental health issue, that it's an eating disorder. From the outside, the patient looks fine. They may be really thin, but a lot of people are thin.
Telling me that I was crazy and it was an eating disorder was probably the most damaging thing that I went through. I would get so frustrated because I was like, no, this is a legitimate thing. And I actually am just in pain and I'm suffering and nobody really understood. Once you have been told you're crazy enough, I think you slowly start to believe it because nobody's validating your feelings.
I constantly was on the internet. I was calling doctors. I even have received 2 emails that said, that she was gonna probably die and that they wouldn't take her as a patient.
We believed that I would have my PICC line and I would just live out to how long the PICC line would help me live and I would die on that. And we pretty much accepted that. I was done and I knew it was time.
Spin around.
Bryn has always been very sweet. She has always been mature beyond her years. Even when we would move, the neighbors would say, she just seems so much older and mature than she is.
Get in there, Opie, help him out. Good kid.
I was a very active kid. I pictured when I was going to grow up that I was going to do soccer for the rest of my life. When I wasn't at practice, I was home in the backyard playing soccer, or even kicking the soccer ball in the basement, putting holes in the wall. This journal entry was the first one I ever wrote when I first got sick. I was 11 years old. Friday, I finally came back to school from being sick every day since my birthday 3 weeks ago. I couldn't eat. I couldn't get out of my bed.
Dizziness, getting up, blacking out, brain fog, inability to focus.
I didn't go to school. I stopped playing sports. At that point, it turned into going to a bunch of different doctors, trying to get their opinions on what they think was going on. A lot of them would just say it was in my head and that I was fine. Clearly, I wasn't.
They immediately go to, the psych aspect, call psych in, or think, it's an eating disorder. For this condition, that's not it. You've been down the road with counseling and you've done all those things. Because they went there, she became almost ashamed of being sick. In return for her, all it had was judgment and darkness and no validation for what she was enduring.
At the children's hospitals, it was awful. It was absolutely awful. I've never been treated so poorly in my life. I'd be in the hospital for days because I was screaming in pain, and obviously something was wrong. No kids crying and screaming nonstop. And I would say, I just want to give up. I just want this, to be over with. They immediately assume I was just suicidal, or, she's just crazy. She'd be better off in a mental hospital. My mom would be rushing me to an ER, and we'd call ahead and be like, okay, this is her files. This is what she has. And they'd be like, sorry, she's too complicated. We don't want to see her.
What was once days turned into weeks, turned into months, turned into years. It was getting heavy and lonely and dark and desperate. But I would study sometimes 12 hours a day. Honestly, that's all I would do. It was critical we found someone that would really hear us out and listen, because I was watching her lose hope. There were actually quite a few times the suffering was just too much. I remember one in particular. It was a hospital stay, and she had chosen to not have any more medical care and to go home and, in her mind, die. That was not a fun hospital drive home. And I remember going up and checking on her every few minutes, hoping she would change her mind.
I'm so done. I just don't feel loved anymore. I just have this huge hole in my heart. I'm just worn out from all this pain and not being better. I just don't understand why I was chosen for this life. I just really want it to be over.
Hey, stand up.
There you go, Hanson Ann. Lean back, lean back.
Hannah has been sick going on 19 months. It's a place I never imagined being, especially with my daughter. We were visiting the hospital frequently, within 1 to 2 times a week. We were not getting any direction to a diagnosis at that time, and there was a lot of diagnosis of mental and behavioral. They always would say, Hannah, your mind is stronger than your body, and if you really wanted to get better, you just have to put your mind to it.
They would always tell me that if my brain was strong enough, I could get myself better.
She would sit there and tell us, I'm trying so hard and my mind's not strong enough and my body's not getting better, and how come I don't have a strong mind? Hannah expressed to us often that nobody believed her, and that if this was going to be her journey and she had to continue to suffer like this, she was okay to be done with her life.
I told my parents when I left the hospital that I felt like I had just left an abuse camp because of the way they made me feel.
There were times where Hannah was told that, if she was going to throw up, that she should just swallow it. It definitely was neglect and medical abuse, I believe, because they didn't want to deal with her and they thought she was making it up, being dramatic.
I needed someone to take me seriously and actually listen to what I was saying and what was happening to my body.
I think the reasoning behind them not digging deeper into finding the answers was they aren't aware, honestly, of these diagnoses, and they don't really understand them. It wasn't until we were led to a doctor who had been trained and was knowledgeable about these syndromes that actually looked at her images and told us what she had. We were so excited to finally have something that someone could see because it gave us a reason to know that her pain and suffering was not just in vain and that she wasn't making this up.
When you actually find a doctor that will listen to you and that understands what you're saying, you feel this relief. And then you actually have hope that you can find the answers, that you can get better.
With having everyone telling me it was in my head, this isn't real, to have a doctor say, you do have this, I'm gonna help you, it changed everything for me. I actually felt some hope for once.
Now we know Bryn has POTS. She also has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and multiple vascular syndromes, and they include median arcuate ligament syndrome, nutcracker syndrome, May-Thurner syndrome, and superior mesenteric artery syndrome.
It's definitely scary once you figure it out, but at the same time, it's reassuring that there's hope and a possibility for change.
Hannah has been diagnosed with nutcracker syndrome, POTS. She has MALS, mast cell activation syndrome, EDS, May-Thurner syndrome, cranial cervical instability, SMA, and gastroparesis, along with other side effects of these diagnoses.
It was hard to get these diagnoses, but it was almost freeing and like a relief to be able to know that there was something there and that it wasn't just all in my head and that these symptoms were real.
I think that is the most correct term you could use, is invisible illness. I mean, you could look at me right now and think, she's so healthy, she looks bright. Well, I have a million other things going on in my body that I would die to get rid of. And most kids with syndromes and vascular compressions feel the exact same way. It's been like waking up with the flu every day for the past 7 years.
Overall, I'm doing a lot better. I mean, I have to take it day by day. Those bad days are horrendous, but I have a lot more good days. I'm now working, which I never thought was possible.
To sum up into words what Bryn has become, one very brave little girl with a very scary future ahead of her, but yet she still chose to get up and to fight every day.
It took 7 years to have a medical team all on board, and it's sad it took that long.
This has made Allie who she is. I don't know that I would have had the strength to do what she's done. I've just seen her really dig deep, and she's developed this beautiful soul.
I am doing a lot better. I am able to be a little bit more independent. I feel like I can communicate with my doctor openly about my symptoms, and he won't doubt me. He will listen to me and validate my feelings. I will be battling it for the rest of my life, and I will be healing definitely for the rest of my life.
We started focusing on what can we do to bring awareness, to advocate for vascular compressions, what can we do to help others. You start advocating for this to become something that can be diagnosed and treated. Right now, there's really not a place to send people. I get calls at least 2 to 3 times a week with a patient saying, I have these symptoms, what do you think? And I'm not a doctor. I always say I'm not a doctor, but I have no place to send them.
As physicians, I think it's a plea for many individuals to really listen to your patient. Don't be quick to judge and validate them. I think I speak for all of us when we want to portray how the care needs to be more urgent, because the suffering is indescribable, it's unspeakable.
I do believe that with the right education and awareness of these complicated syndromes, that medical professionals have the ability to diagnose these people who are suffering from them and get them the help that they need. We know that there is hope for Hannah. We truly believe that she has a life that is destined to be lived, and we can make it through. And I will say there has been some really dark days in our family where it's difficult to see another day. But I know that we can do it, and we can spread awareness and help to get the right care that we need in these people's lives.
I'm sharing my story in hopes that doctors will be able to learn more and help people like me with these compression syndromes. I'm a fighter, a warrior, and I am so strong.